Josh Heller calls the Devils games play-by-play on the radio, of course, and he joins us now here on Big Board Sports and 104.5 The Team. Josh, Chris Honorato, and the closer, Brian Mariano, with you here. How are you, man?
I'm great, gentlemen. How you guys doing?
We're excellent. We're doing well. Let's start Devils, and then we have other business here to take care of with the big news of the day that we want to get your thoughts on. Closer, just clued me in that you are in fact a big Patriots fan. But the business at hand, Josh, is the Albany Devils. Their last year here, of course, in Albany, and Game 1 Thursday night from the season series. What do you take away with the matchup ahead against Toronto?
It's a tough question, and the reason why is that in the AHL playoffs, and really minor league playoffs, more than in the pro league, your team looks very different than it does during the season. So we played well against Toronto this year, to be perfectly honest. We had a winning record against them this year. And, the problem is that the Toronto team that we're going to see tomorrow doesn't look all that much like the one we've seen in the past. And the Albany team doesn't look all that much the same also. You get players down, you get guys who get called up. Blake Spears was just added yesterday from juniors. He's a guy who started the season in the NHL. Whether or not he plays, that's another piece that we just really don't know the answer to. What I can say is, we haven't seen Toronto in a while, but they're a team that's been on the rise for some time. Right about January, they were sitting in last place in the division, and then they clicked. They figured it out, whatever was going on, and they really turned it on through the end of the season. We're the top division team for the most part in the last month or two before getting unseated the last day to fall into that number 2 spot. So, it's going to be a tough matchup, no question. Toronto, not as good as they were last year, though you could make a case the Devils may not be either. But two teams that certainly remember last year's 7-game conference final or division finals, and, two teams that have a decent amount to prove.
So, Josh, I know following this team to where at the end of March they had that, 5 or 6 game losing streak, and then they kind of turned it back on a little bit in the beginning of April. Where do you see this mindset of this team going into the playoffs?
The best thing about that, the 7-game skid, they had lost 8 of 9, and they could not score goals to save their life. At that point, and one of the main reasons that caused that was that a ton of their guys were either injured or were called up into the NHL. Now, they knew that most of those guys, if not all of those guys, were going to come down from the NHL, and since have. But I think what's important is that they were able to kind of kick themselves out of that slump, start scoring goals, start picking up some wins with the team that had been faltering. So they kind of looked around in the locker room and, realized that this was the team they had and didn't rely on those players who were going to be sent down to make that jump, but kind of did it on their own, which I think is important, because then the guys that come down aren't saviors. They're just guys who can help, help the cause of what's going on here. So I think that's important. That they were able to kind of get out of that slump on their own. Then you add in some of the talent from the NHL, whether it's, Miles Wood or Steve Santini, or Blake Spears from juniors. He had a very good junior career. Don't know, again, how quickly he'll be integrated into the lineup. But I do think that, although it's not ideal, that happened, and when it happened, the fact that they were able to kind of get through that and have it not be fatal was, I think, will in the long term, turn out to be a kind of helpful road bump.
Josh, from a goaltending perspective, I mean, everybody, just kind of crutches to this thought and theory that if a team gets a goalie who's hot, they can go on a serious run. Even hot or not, does Albany have steady enough goaltending in your mind and from what you've seen to give the Devils an edge in this series?
Yeah, that's a tough question. Albany right now and for months now has been relying on 2 rookie goaltenders, one who's 20 years old, the other who's 21.
Right.
They certainly have good track records as far as playing, in their junior careers. Ken Appleby won a Memorial Cup 2 years ago. Mackenzie Blackwood was the OHL goaltender of the year last year in juniors. And they've played like kids. They've had obviously the talent is not a question. Talent is there. The question is the consistency. And that has certainly had its ups and downs, its peaks and valleys. But you look at a guy like Mackenzie Blackwood, who at the beginning of the season kind of took a little bit, not just to adjust to, the pace of the game, the style of the game, the talent in the game, but also to adjust to being a pro, to being an adult, to just, growing up a little bit. And I think he's really been able to do that. Coach Kowalski necessarily rode him down the stretch, but certainly saw that he was the goalie who was on the upswing, whereas Ken Appleby earlier in the season was certainly the better of the two numbers-wise. And it looks like right now, though, I certainly can't say for sure, but it looks like right now Mackenzie Blackwood is going to be, kind of given the opportunity to show that he can do it in the playoffs. And if he can, he'll be a guy that can be leaned upon. For Toronto, they're interesting in that the goalie that has really gotten them there this year is a goalie by the name of Garrett Sparks. And he is a goalie that the Devils have played extremely well against over the past couple seasons. Now, the goalie they have not played well against, and the goalie that really was the driving force behind that 7-game series last year, is Antoine Bibeau. And Bibeau has not been very good this year. So the question being is, do the Devils have what it takes to knock Sparks out? Will Toronto decide to go to a goalie who really wasn't as good this year, didn't get them there in Bibeau, but usually plays better against the Devils? Those are questions for Sheldon Keefe, their head coach, not me. But, certainly interesting to see that because the Devils have played Sparks extremely well over the past couple of years, and I have to figure that that's the goalie they're going to go with. So it'll be an interesting matchup goaltending-wise, and as you said, especially in a 5-game series, it can decide the series pretty quickly.
Josh Heller, Albany Devils play-by-play guy, joining us here on Big Board Sports. Now, Josh, with this series, goaltenders aside, who do you think could be the difference maker in this series as we're looking forward to, especially the first 2 games, Thursday and then Saturday at the Times Union Center?
For the Devils, you look at some of the guys who got sent down, and again, Miles Wood is a guy that only played about 15 games here this year and spent much of the season in the NHL. You don't know necessarily 100% what you're going to get from him. Transitioning back to this league, he played last Wednesday, and then he was a little bit banged up, didn't play Friday or Saturday. But I would look towards John Quenneville has certainly been a guy that led the team in scoring. Nick Lappin is another guy who has bounced around between the NHL and the AHL. And last year, he was on an ATO, fresh out of college at Brown, and was huge in that series against Toronto, including a game in which with the extra attacker on, he scored to tie it up and then scored the game winner in overtime. I think that was either game 3 or game 4 here at Times Union Center. So, I think a guy like Lappin could certainly do it. If you want to look past the rookies, you could start to look at a guy like, I guess Blake Coleman is technically a rookie because he missed almost all of last season with a shoulder injury. But a guy like him or like Blake Pietila can certainly have an impact. You look at this team with the guys that they've gotten, they're a good 4-line team, and if they can all consistently play and Rick can consistently, roll 4 lines out there, which he really likes to do, I think it certainly is a huge boost for this team, and really every line has something that can turn into a positive for this team and help them try to get an edge.
Josh, you got good news, though. I'm not working any of the games, so there's highly unlikely we're going to go into shootouts, as the joke between me and you is throughout the last few years. But
and that's good. It's good, Ryan, because overtime in playoff hockey can go as long as humanly possible.
Exactly.
I'm pretty sure we'd be there till next week playing game 1.
Exactly. So you're welcome then, I guess. Let's get to the story of the day. I know that you're a Patriots guy, and that finding out the news of Aaron Hernandez's death this morning, just your reaction about it.
So this morning, I was up with my son bright and early, and just had Mike and Mike on the TV and actually saw it down the scroll. They had obviously already mentioned it. I hadn't caught it yet, but saw the little breaking news down on the scroll at the bottom, and it's that story gets more and more tragic every moment. It's hard to put into words. Kind of the timeline of how he has been and what he was able to do, and what he was able to come from, and everything that he had, and then it all kind of just fell apart. I think it's sad from his perspective. Obviously, it's sad for his family and the families of all those involved. But I think from a societal standpoint, it's sad also. Society let him down in a very real way. Whether that's the Patriots organization, maybe to an extent, but society as a whole. He tried to pull himself away from that lifestyle and was never fully able to do that, and it's unfortunate for all parties involved, and everyone comes out of this looking badly. Everyone comes out of this looking badly, and it's strange because we did just see him in the news a couple days ago after being acquitted of the double homicide. Of course, then you have the attachment to that, but he's already serving a life without parole sentence now. So the timing is strange. So it sort of catches you off guard in that regard because there was all the talk about his appeal and the fact that basically the main motive was to try to cover up that double murder, which now he has been acquitted from. So it almost seemed like from his perspective that okay, maybe my appeal has some gravitas to it, whether it does or not, I don't know. But so the timing seems strange, so it almost catches you off guard a little bit, and especially just that he's been in the news. It's just it really is weird overall. But again, I think it's just a black eye on everyone from top to bottom, from him, from the team, society, everything. I think it's just it really is a tragedy in the truest sense of the word.
Josh, we really appreciate the time this morning, man. Josh Heller, Albany Devils play-by-play voice. Game 1 Thursday, Game 2 Saturday at the Times Union Center before heading to Toronto. We'll, of course, be listening in. Josh, thanks so much.
Thanks, Josh.
Hey, guys, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.